So if you're not coder, that's totally cool, and you can watch me coding, making mistakes, typos, and enjoy and collaborate with us. Cool. So should we talk about the episode? Should we talk about the project first?
Let's talk about the project. Absolutely, I think that's a really good idea. So the idea with this project, let me go ahead and bring up a little bit of an architectural diagram so that we can see what it is we're actually going to be building out over the course of this episode. So let me go and just bring this up for everybody so we can go ahead and take a look. So this is what the application is going to, or the architecture itself is going to look like. It's a pretty nice little serverless architecture there,
Yeah.
and as we've kind of pointed out a few times, this is all free tier things, right? So the idea is that we want you to be able to, build with us and experiment as we go along, so that you can really get a feel for this. So, May, what have we done here? What is this application
So
actually doing?
yeah. So first, the whole project is based on the serverless application. So, but there are very simple components. As you can see, how many do we have? Six, nine components that we are going to build, and they're all based on the serverless architecture. So there's no server, no maintenance in terms of that.
Yeah.
So first, if you can see from the diagram on the left-hand side, we have a user coming to the website. Thanks for drawing that, Ben.
My
Come
pleasure.
into the website, interact with our applications. And that application is what we're going to build over the 8 weeks. So first, user interact with the application using API gateway. So Amazon API gateway, that's the first interaction point to our applications. And if you don't know what API gateway it is about, don't worry, we will go through that in the later episode. For now, bear with us. So API
Yeah.
gateway come on to the first interaction point, right? And then from the API gateway, it's talking to AWS Lambda, which is the serverless compute service. And from the Lambda, what we're going to do, we are going to upload the images through the API gateway and then the Lambda. And the images are going to store in the Amazon S3 simple storage service.
Yeah, so the
And
user flow, just I guess to jump in there a little bit. So what happens is the user actually, the whole application point, and we're going to go through a quick demonstration shortly of what this application does so you can see what we're actually going to be building out. But the idea is we grab an image, a photograph, and we're going to upload that from a user perspective from the front end application. That's going to go directly into an Amazon
S3.
S3 bucket. Okay, so Amazon S3, don't be too worried if you don't know what some of these concepts are at this point. We're going to go through and explain these services as we go through, and we're going to do it while we're building, right? We're going to kind of go through and explain to you what these things are. But Amazon S3 is a highly available, highly durable object level storage within AWS, and it's brilliant for storing things like images. Makes it for a really good use case. Video assets, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, anything you want to store in a highly durable way that's performance, makes for a nice use case. Great for read-heavy workloads, which is perfect for us here, where our website's going to be serving
We're
out a
going
lot
to
of
read a
read-heavy
lot of
workloads, right?
photos. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so as a way of kind of diving into this later on throughout the episodes, we're going to be setting up some decoupling mechanisms here. So we're going to basically set up an asynchronous decoupling with Amazon SQS, which is a queue-based service, to help us buffer these operations and achieve really performance scale within AWS. So we're going to be doing that a little bit later on. So this back end is essentially asynchronous, where as soon as we drop an image or upload an image into Amazon S3, it's going to go and trigger an AWS Lambda function. Again, don't worry too much if you haven't used Lambda. We're gonna dive into that next episode. We're gonna really deep dive into Lambda as we're going through this. But we're going to trigger a function which is going to then essentially make an API call out to a service that we have, which is a really cool service within AWS called Amazon Recognition, which is a machine learning based service that performs object recognition and analysis from images and videos and things like that. So we're going to grab some labels, and we're going to then return that into an Amazon DynamoDB table so that we can recall those from our front end applications so that we can see what's in these images that we're actually storing within Amazon S3. And that's where your API comes in, May.
Yeah, that's right. And I was just mentioned there because I saw a question in the chat, and we are going to use Amazon S3 also as a static website. So it's good eyes out there for pointing it out. So Amazon S3 as the static website. That's right. So it's quite simple, isn't it? We have only a few components, and we're going to build it from the scratch. We're going to build some components today. Like literally, we're going to jump into the IDE and start building, and just and go over some concept, some core concept of those services as we go through.
Yes, and just to answer a question there from Latamless, are you going to use infrastructure as code like CloudFormation or something else? Absolutely.
Yay!
So we're starting from scratch with this application. We're going to be building using the AWS Cloud Development Kit, or the CDK, which is really the focus of this episode. We want this all to be infrastructure as code, right? So that is absolutely what we're going to do. We're going to dive into that shortly. We're going to talk about what that actually is, which is really cool. So let's just, I guess,
do you want a demo, Ben? Or do you...
Yeah, absolutely. So let's flip over now to a quick demo of what this application looks like. So if you can see the screen right now, this is what the application looks like. Now, with user interfaces, they're often quite a challenging thing. This is based in a React.js framework we're using for this front-end application. And the old saying goes that front end is, or a user interface is like a joke. if you need to explain it, it's not very good. So we have tried to keep this quite simple. The idea is that we've got a home page, we've got a photos menu item so that we can go and look at our photos and things like that. We've got an administrative interface which we're going to dive into so that we can see what's actually happening. So to give you a gauge, with the admin interface, and again, this is all quite integrated. This is making API calls through Amazon API Gateway. So what we can do here is we can go and upload images into our application. So as an example, let's just say we go through and open up this image. We'll go and upload that into our application. So that's making it a call out using what we call the Amplify library. And it's making a call out to Amazon S3 to upload that image. And if we go over to the Photos button here, you'll see that there's an image there. There's also a previous image there. You can see that this little fellow has been identified correctly as, I don't know if it's actually a lab. Someone in the chat might be able to tell me, but it's been labelled, which is the important point there. If we go and have a look at our fruit and veg, then you can see that it's picked up that there are some fruit, some citrus. We've got some vegetables and things like that in there. So it's performed some recognition of those fruits and things like that. And that is the point of this thing. We can go through and we can manage these. We can go and delete these items, and at the moment you can see we've got the JSON objects being displayed in there as well, which we can turn off.
Yeah.
But we can delete images and things like that in here, and it's really like a CRUD-based interface so that we can go through and manage our photographs.
Amazing. Okay. I can see some questions in the chat. There is a question: is it good for beginners? Definitely, because we're going to go through some like core concepts in the infrastructure as code, and we will be coding along and also sharing the code after the show. So definitely, it's good for beginners or level of developers if you are interested. And I can see some questions about Sam from Amazing Davey. We are going to talk about CDK, between the difference between CDK and CloudFormations and some other use cases around that.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to go into that. So just a quick 60-foot view of this episode, right? Because this is obviously going to be broken down across the number of different episodes. In this episode, our main focus is the AWS Cloud Development Kit. And using that, we're going to declaratively build out our actual backend asynchronous application in this show. So we're going to go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and we're going to declare and build out an Amazon S3 bucket to host and store our images that we're going to be using for our application. 11 nines of durability, really great place to store these things. And then what we're going to do is we're going to also build out our AWS Lambda function. This is not the focus of the show, and we're going to deep dive on AWS Lambda in the next episode. But we are going to step through and use this and build out our AWS Lambda function in this episode. And we're also going to build out our Amazon DynamoDB table so that we can store our metadata, our labels that we get from our images. And so as a workflow, May, this is cool because we can upload an image into the Amazon S3 bucket.
That's right.
It's going to trigger our AWS Lambda function.
Yep.
And of course,
put it into a DynamoDB, and we will query it from the DynamoDB. And in this episode, we're going to build it, like Ben said, using the CDK Cloud Development Kit for those 3 components. And also after that, we would deploy it into the AWS account and test it. Hopefully it works.
Absolutely. All right. So, now, at a high level, we want to just talk about what the CDK is, what the AWS CDK is before we jump in and get started. If anyone hasn't worked with the CDK before, it's basically it's a framework that we can use to declare our AWS resources using familiar programming languages. It sits on top of CloudFormation. All right, so when we go and synthesize, we call a synthesize an actual project within the CDK, it outputs CloudFormation. So you still get all the benefits of things like configuration drift and you know all of the goodness that comes with CloudFormation, but you get to develop this in the language of your choice of the supported languages, which of course we're going to get into. So the cool thing is that, you know, with CloudFormation, it becomes very verbose and it can be quite long. If anyone's built CloudFormation templates before, they're brilliant, but I like to think of this as the assembly language of the cloud. CDK simplifies the way that we build these and, of course, makes it simpler to kind of build these building blocks, these Lego pieces, and actually string together an architecture that we can use to do something great with, right? So just to switch over, just to explain what an application looks like in the CDK before we just jump in. So we start out with an app in the CDK, and essentially we have a number of different stacks. We can build multiple stacks within the CDK, and then the actual building block component is constructs. Okay, so we're going to use constructs to do this. So before we do that, in a couple of minutes, we're going to go in and we're just going to start coding, right? We're just going to start building this out. We're going to switch over and we're going to jump into that gear. But before we do, just wanted to also discuss at a high level the challenge we're going to look at later on in the episode, right, May?
Yeah, totally. So we are doing a little fun challenge during the halfway through the episodes. It's called Buzzer Pie API Challenge, and we're gonna start doing that at 11:30 AEST time. So it's just like halfway through the episode. And Ben is now gonna show off his API. Buzzer Pie API.
That's right.
You saw what you're trying to pull it off.
I am just bringing up my image, so bear with me. Which one have we got here? Okay, there we go. All right, so lots of images here going on. So this is, and I think somebody in the chat pointed out this before, lots of unused Pis in the background. I've got to admit, I do have a slight problem with Raspberry Pis because every time they ninja release a new Pi, I buy the new one and then I end up with a stack of old ones that, you know, that just sit there. But the challenge itself, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, you know, essentially asking you a question and competition to see who answers the question most quickly. It's actually going to trigger off an API call, which is going to really set up an annoying buzzer here on the back end here. So you can really annoy me setting this buzzer off. It's quite loud.
And is it going to light the cloud that you have to activate the cloud?
Yes, yeah, it will also activate the cloud. So we're going to turn on the little LED.
right answer.
fluoro cloud thing that's going on behind there. That's assuming that my API actually works. So it will be a good test. You want to stick around to see that. So it
Amazing.
should be a lot of fun, right?
Cool. So should we go back to the project and let's start coding?
Absolutely. So let's go over and have a look
So
at my
before
screen. So sorry, go
yeah,
for it, mate.
while Ben is setting things up for me. Okay, on this project, I'll just run over a bit of a prerequisite to get started on this project. And when you can clone the repository, we will let you know the GitHub link after this. So for the prerequisite for this project, what you will need is the AWS CLI to work with the command line, AWS account and user to deploy the project into your AWS account, Node.js to run the project, and IDE of your programming language. So for the CDK, you have a choice of using TypeScript,
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript, Java, C Sharp, Python, all these programming language at your disposal, and use the IDE for your programming language that you're comfortable with. And last but not least, we will need the CDK, AWS CDK toolkit, command line utility to allow you to work with the CDK apps. So let me switch. Oh, okay, cool. So Ben's already created that thing. So
Yes.
first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the empty project. So we're going to start from the scratch. I'm just creating the directory with the empty projects and then get into the directory. So plain projects, we don't have anything. The first thing we want to do when we start the project, we want to initialize the project. And we want to use the CDK command called CDK init to start initializing the project. So what it does is basically to create a boilerplate code, some packages that you're going to use, and all these necessary resources that you will be using to build the application. So the next step is I'm not gonna, so if you do CDK init, you will probably see what are the available templates. So first we're going to do the applications. If you want to test it out, you can do CDK init sample app dash dash and then the language of your choice. And for this project, I'm going to use TypeScript. So with that, it's initializing all these boilerplate codes and npm installing all the packages that's needed, and just creating a boilerplate resources for us. So once this is finished, we will go and jump into an IDE and to see what's the boilerplate codes created for us. Oh, it's still downloading. Oh, cool.
All right. It's exciting. So this is really useful to just get started with the project itself, right? It builds out the base. We're going to go and explore that once
Yeah.
your IDE loads up, May. What is your favorite
And
IDE there? Are you using?
I'm using IntelliJ. I know it's
Yes.
not the best for the TypeScript,
Okay.
as you can
It's
see.
all good. It's all. We're in a happy place. We're in a safe place.
Uh,
Okay. All right. So.
oh, okay. Anyway, cool.
All right. So have you
So
brought your
if
IDE up
I
there?
just let me load it up my ID. It's
Okay.
just playing it out.
Basanthe
So,
USA 2004, thank you for following us. Absolutely, keep checking in there, following the stream, following the AWS channel. It's great. Love to see that as well. So fantastic.
amazing. Oh, cool. I'm
All
getting
right.
ready, being just trying to open my ID.
Oh yes, yes. Well,
Okay. I might need a few minutes.
Okay, that's cool. All
I
right.
think
So well.
my connection just dropped.
Okay. All right. That's cool. All right. So
Um, so I guess from the next command, what we're going to do is to initialize we initialize the project to run through the project structures.
mhm. Okay, so what we can do here is we can switch over. If we go and have a quick look at the CDK, let me just bring up a window here. Looks like maybe having a few little connectivity glitches there, but that's okay. We're good with that. So so May, let us know when you're back online. But what we'll do is we'll go and create a directory here. So we'll call this Dev Hour Series 1 or something like that. And if we go and change into our directory here and do a CDK init-l type script, oops. Okay, what'll happen is this will go through and again instantiate those resources for us, building out that boilerplate code so that we can go ahead and get started, and kind of a nice way of going and doing that. Thanks for the follow. Awesome. Eric Guyan 2021. Perfect. All right. So now that that's all done, what we can do is we can go and open up a an editor, and let me just bring this across so that you can see what's going on here. You can see I'm just using VS Code at the moment, just to go through and explain what some of these resources are that have been created for us automatically from a boilerplate perspective. You can see here that we have a lib directory, and the lib directory contains the core file that we're going to be working with there. So that lib directory itself has got the stack file. This is where we're going to spend most of our time within the CDK, is adding code into here. So you're back, May. All right, cool. So did you want to take back over again? Did you? All right, fine. We'll throw it back over there.
Sorry to pick you up.
I was having fun there. Now, look, okay, that's fine. Take over. It's all good. So go for it. So we can still see your terminal there.
Can you see my? Okay. So
we're not seeing your IDE.
Terminal?
We're just seeing your terminal. Correct.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
So hopefully you can see my IDE.
Yes, we can. Okay.
Amazing. So, yeah, you can see my ID and then the project structure.
Correct. We can see that.
Oh, amazing. So apologies for the technical glitch. My connection decided to drop at home.
My guess is there was a koala walking on your phone line.
Probably.
Maybe.
I don't have a baby.
We'll just leave it at that, right? It was just technical glitch.
That's
could
right.
Go, right?
So we did the CDK init previously. And when we did the CDK init, the boilerplate code are generated. And first we can look at the bin folder. So bin here, we have dev.our project.ts. And this is basically the entry point.
The internet tube's got clogged with Vegemite. Sorry, just wanted to call that one out. That's a good call. And quite possible.
Nice one.
Nice. Okay, cool.
So this is the entry point for our project. So we initialize the projects. We initialize the stack here. If you have multiple stack, if we're going to build multiple stack later on in the show, we're gonna declare it here and initialize it here. Next one is the lib. So we have dev our project dash stack.ts. This is the main stack, and we are going to spend a lot of time here, right? We're going to build construct in here, and this is the main stack we are extending. And the next one is cdk.json. It's basically tell the CDK toolkit how to run the applications, and we won't be changing too much on this one. We'll leave it as the default one. Okay. Package.json, all the dependency and the version and all the build script that we will be using for the project. So that's pretty much the boilerplate that's created. If for the next one, before we go into create the first construct, let's take a little break and do the challenge, shall we?
Sure, let's do that. That's we can really see if this API works, and I'm kind of curious to see whether it does. So let's go ahead and give that a try.
Who is up for a little challenge? Anyone?
All right.
on the chat.
Okay, all right. So we're going to bring a question up on the screen.
Yes.
And here's what the idea is. As soon as we bring a question up on the screen, your job is to type the answer to that question. It'll be a one-word answer. You just type it into the chat, and the first person to answer correctly will be labeled as the winner. All right, and it should annoy me because it'll set off the buzzer and the light, and we're going to be able to see what's going on there. So let's switch over. Let's fire this thing up. All right.
Yeah.
Lots of guesses there. Everyone's guessing answers, right? Just bang. All right, let's do it. All right, so which of the following languages is not yet supported by the AWS? Oh, someone's got it already. Bang. Straight in there. Who was that? Who was that? That was someone from... Was that a moderator? I think that was a mod. Okay. Lots of... that was really cool. All right, can someone please type exclamation buzz off to turn this thing off? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, nice. Okay, that's really cool.
That was cool.
Wow. All right, nice work. All right, I don't know who answered that. Who was the answer there at the start? I think it might have been a mod.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Really cool. All right. So was it? Okay, there's lots of people saying it was me. Okay, we're gonna have to go through the logs later and call that one out. So we'll find the answer to that question. For me, it just came through as yes. Okay, good, awesome.
That was
All
great
right.
work.
If a mod wants to scroll through and see who actually was labeled the winner there, it could have been a mod. Just calling it out there. Anyway,
yeah,
that was cool. That was
go.
The answer was go. Go is not yet supported by the AWS CDK. Correct. All right.
Cool,
So,
cool.
May,
Let's
what's
go back
next
to
in your application?
Yeah, let's go back to the project. So the first component that we are going to build is the Amazon S3. So which is, if you can see on my screen, so Amazon S3, the first components, and in the application, what it's going to do is to allow the user to upload the images into the S3 buckets. And we are going to build using the CDK S3 construct. And if I could just switch over. So as you remember in the beginning, we mentioned that we're going to build 3 components in this episode, S3, Lambda, and DynamoDB.
Yeah.
And before we get started, I want to install the npm packages to get started using the module in the applications. So I have a little snippet that I copy.
Perfect. And npm's always a fun one, right? You know,
Yeah,
15% of the world's traffic is people watching Netflix. The rest is people doing an RM minus RF node modules, npm install. Just saying, just pointing it out there. Okay.
So we're here installing AWS S3 module, AWS Lambda. We're going to use the AWS Lambda event sources to trigger the Lambda function when the S3 is doing some action. We'll get into that. And AWS DynamoDB and AWS IAM module. So the modules, the package are installed. What we're going to do is going back to our IDE.
Yes.
Make it a bit bigger. So we're going to import those modules that we just install. And I have some snippet that I pre-created because I don't want anyone to see me typing.
And before we go too much further, I just wanted to point out, if somebody hasn't done so already, can I please just get one of the mods just to pop the GitHub URL in the chat there for us? So if you're watching along and you want to follow along with the code here, please just go and clone the repo. We've got the public open source repo there in GitHub. You can go and clone it. If you haven't done so already, walk through with us, right? And have a look at what we're actually doing here. So we pre-baked some of this code. We might pivot along the way a little bit, but if you want to walk through the code with us and pop it in there. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you
for popping it in the chat there. That's awesome. All right.
So in there, in the README file, we also listed what are the commands, what are the packages we need, and some prerequisites to get you started.
Yes.
So we have imported the packages. What we're going to do next is to declare a variable that we're going to use for the S3. I have to type this one. that was the wrong snippet. Cool.
We
So,
can laugh at your joke. We can
okay.
laugh. That's okay. It's all good.
Am
Go,
I the
go
only
for it.
one laughing at my own code? Yeah, probably.
All right. So we defined the bucket
Um,
name. That's good.
we
So we need
define it.
our
We define
S3
the.
bucket.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
the name of it, right?
the name of
So
the
that's good.
S3 buckets.
All right.
Thanks for drawing that.
Got it.
Cool.
Right.
So next one, we're gonna start building the S3 construct.
Yeah.
So um, so if we look at the stack here, so we have export class, dev our project stack, that's the class name. We extend it from the stack module, and it has a constructor. The constructor takes three parameters, if you want to call it. And the first one is scope, which is the scope of this constructor in the stack, and the ID. ID is basically the logical ID of the constructor that we're going to build. In this case, S3 logical ID for the construct. And then the properties. The property is optional. So if you want to define some properties, you can. If you
Just
don't,
just pointing out a typo there, mate. The chat have pointed it out, so just highlighting it for everyone to see. So we can.
oh
Okay.
God,
just going there already.
great one.
It's all good. Okay. Thanks for calling that out. People will watch. All right, that's good.
Ooh.
Okay. All right. So where's our snippet for the S3
For the
buckets?
S3.
Okay.
So
All
I'm
right.
just putting the
Okay.
the S3. So if you want to draw band, you can draw. So
Oh,
first,
just pen in hand. That's all good.
we initialize the image bucket, the constant object,
Okay.
and then new S3.buckets. So that is from the constructor, the S3 module that we are using it here. Constructor, like we mentioned, three constructor, but here we're only using the scope and then the logical ID. The scope is this. It's basically the current stack.
Yeah,
And
just to let you know, like I guess that as May's pointing out here, most constructs within the AWS CDK have a very similar signature. So we want to pass in the scope, and then we've got the actual name of the resource, and that's a very just standardized way of doing things. The other thing I just wanted to point out quickly is that we have different level, if that's okay. To switch in here, but we do have different levels of resourcing here. So with the AWS CDK, we've got high-level constructs. So these are the constructs that are exactly like what we're just doing here, right? We're using the high-level constructs, and these use things like smart defaults, so we don't have to provide every single property for a resource. And then we've got low-level constructs as well. And the low-level constructs represent every other CloudFormation resource available. So one thing that was kind of asked earlier on is like, how does this differ to AWS SAM? Well, AWS SAM uses essentially it makes it simpler to develop the templates by using a transform on top of CloudFormation. What this does is, with SAM, it's mostly for serverless applications.
and it makes sense if you have a serverless use case or the architecture and you want to use it on top of that makes sense to use the SAM. Sorry to talking over.
That's okay. But one other point we just wanted to make is that if you want to use AWS SAM local to test your Lambda functions and things locally, you can still do that with the CDK. So just pointing it out there, you can still get the best of both worlds. This just allows you to do it in your programming language, right? Which is kind of a really nice way of doing it. So the construct itself is exactly as the signature we're doing here. All right. So I'm going to switch back to your screen, mate. Sorry, just wanted to make sure we're all in the same boat here.
No, that's a really good point. And also with the CDK and the CloudFormation, I guess CDK is more developer-centric toolkit. You will use something that's familiar with programming, something that you're familiar with that programming language. But if you're familiar with JSON and YAML, there's nothing stopping us to use the CloudFormation, right? And CDK itself, it's compiled down at the end when we do the CDK deploy and synthesis. It will just fully formed CloudFormation will be generated at the end.
Correct. The full canonical CloudFormation. And Grey Wolf just had a quick question. Does that mean the CDK would be equivalent to local stack? No, it's a bit different. Local stack is more about running and testing your APIs locally so that you can test resources without calling the actual AWS APIs. The CDK essentially builds out and synthesizes CloudFormation templates so that you can define your AWS resources as code, right? Infrastructure as code. So that's kind of just to try and form that delineation.
Yeah.
So you could use SAM. We could use SAM in this scenario, absolutely. The reason why we chose not to use SAM in this scenario was because we prefer, or I prefer, and I think Maeve prefers, to develop this using familiar programming languages. So using TypeScript, for example, instead of YAML or JSON, right? That's the only...
that's right. And when we were working on this one, because we're two people team working on it, we want to maintain this infrastructure as code in kind of like the way the application would maintain the software application that we will usually maintain. Like we want to use the version control for this infrastructure as code. We want to commit it and maintain like actual application that you would normally do. So that's also another reason that we decided to try with the CDK.
And so the great thing with this construct that we have here is this actually goes through and creates that S3 bucket. That one line is all we need within the CDK to create an Amazon S3 bucket. And so it simplifies it greatly in terms of building these resources. And I like to think of these as kind of like Lego pieces, right? You get a whole lot of building blocks and you can build an application like very simply here. And it's all defined as infrastructure, so you can build it and tear it down as you need to as part of your CI/CD pipelines, which we're going to get to later in the series, right? Okay.
And
all right.
So also on this, like, so the first line of code is to create the S3 bucket. And the second line, you might probably ask, it is just to give us some output after the CDK has been deployed and the resource has been created in our AWS account. And the second line was doing basically to give us the CloudFormation output with the ID of image buckets and the value as the bucket name that we just created. So that's basically to give us some visual, making sure the image has been created and we get the bucket name as a result.
Awesome. So, all right, mate. What about our DynamoDB table?
That's right. So let's build the second component. Is the DynamoDB. So,
so just going through this now, as we're going through, if you have any questions or you want to dive deeper, please remember that we do have 3-day courses designed around the developing path, around developing on AWS, which is a 3-day kind of intensive course to learn the ins and outs of all of this end to end. And we also have an advanced developing course, so I might get the mods to just pop the URLs into the chat for us on that one. But as we're going through, we're hoping to give you nuggets of information, but as we're building a project, it's going to be difficult to give you all the theory. So we're hoping to give you resources and point you in the right direction if you want to go and deep dive on any of these areas. So DynamoDB, just to let you know. What is it, mate?
So DynamoDB is the AWS NoSQL database, and in this construct, in this project, we are going to build a DynamoDB. We're using the DynamoDB, and the construct that we are doing here is basically new DynamoDB.table using that the extended from the parent class, and as usual, we have 3 parameters that it takes from the constructor. First is the scope, logical ID, and this one's a little interesting. So we have a property value here that we put it in. So the property value change based on the construct that we are using. Some of them are, some of them you have to fill it out. Some of them you don't. For the S3, we don't have to. We can if we want to customize it. So, and for the DynamoDB, we have a partition key as the property, and the name of the partition key is the image, and the type is string. So pretty simple. So after that, that's all we need to create a DynamoDB in the CDK construct.
Because this is NoSQL, I guess just pointing out, I don't know if you mentioned the partition key there, we need to be able to find this. DynamoDB or Amazon DynamoDB is a highly available regional service that allows us to I guess, set up a table and create a table at scale that, we get single digit millisecond at pretty much any scale. It's a really performant service. But we
Yeah,
need a partition key to be able to locate it's a key value store essentially. So we need to be able to locate that. So that's what we're providing there. In this case, we're providing the name of the
awesome.
image. Okay,
Cool. And we get
cool.
some output for the DynamoDB, which is also a table name. And when we deploy it, we will see the image, the table name. So that's the DynamoDB. The last component that we're going to build is the Lambda. So Lambda,
Lambda. Love Lambda. Okay. All right. AWS Lambda. Just to let you know, if you are quite new to this, again, just pointing in the right direction, we're going to deep dive on AWS Lambda and API Gateway, Amazon API Gateway in the next episode. But if you, just to give you the high level view, it allows us to run our code, our functions in a serverless way without having to worry about the underlying compute and having to take care of servers, which is why it's serverless. So extremely performant way of just executing our code, right?
that's
So that's
right.
what we're doing here.
Cool,
All
amazing.
right.
So Lambda, we are creating a recognition Lambda function. So this is the logical ID of the Lambda construct.
Yes.
There is some interesting properties here what I would like to point out. So first is the code. The Lambda code is coming from the folder, the path that we define here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to physically copy the folder into the file,
Yes.
into
And
the
just
project.
and just
But
wanted to point out as well, and while you're copying that, May, as you're going through that, so what we're doing when we're providing these assets is we're providing a directory that this AWS CDK can use to go and create an artifact for us and deploy it for us. So if we give it a directory name here, what the AWS CDK CLI does is it creates a zip file from that and pushes it up to a staging bucket in our account. And that staging bucket is created when we go and do what's called a CDK bootstrap, which you will need to do the first time you use this in your account. You'll need to go and do a bootstrap. There's details for that in the README file of the code in the GitHub repository.
yeah,
Okay.
awesome. So I finished copying the files. So we've got, if you can see in my projects, I just copy the recognition Lambda. Like Ben said, it will be available in the GitHub. Have the runtime set it up for the Python 3.7 handler is for the entry point for the recognition Lambda function.
Yes.
Some value for the timeout for 30 seconds and memory size. And interesting one are the environment value. So the environment value that we want to pass on to the Lambda function are two values, the table name, which is the DynamoDB table that we created, and the buckets, the image bucket name. And that's all we're doing. That's
Yes.
to create the Lambda. And then what we're going to do is the Lambda has a few jobs to do, right? If you remember the Ben's diagram, the architecture
Yeah.
diagram. So Lambda job is to pull the image from the S3 buckets and take the image and send it to the Amazon Recognition Service to do the image detection. So it needs some permission because by default there is no permission set it up by default. So you have to either allow them or deny them to give the permission to the Lambda to do the job. So first, I'll just jump onto this two line is the buckets, the S3 buckets. It's giving the read access to the Lambda function. So the Lambda can read the image from the S3.
Yes.
And the third line here is the DynamoDB table, because Lambda is going to get the value from the recognition, Amazon recognition function and store it into the DynamoDB. So basically writing the value back into the DynamoDB. So we're giving the write access to the DynamoDB. And we could go on to the next one, the recognition.
And just to answer a quick chat request there as well. So that Fried Piaget, sorry, I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes, these episodes do get recorded. You can retrospectively come back and watch these episodes and hit pause if you want to check out things as you're working through. Absolutely, that is going to be available. So, all right.
Amazing.
Sorry, mate. Okay,
No,
back to you.
that's all good. So cool. So next one is adding a row policy to the Lambda. So if you remember, the Lambda function is going to call the Amazon recognition to do the image processing, to detect some labels in the image. And what we want to do is we want to allow the Lambda function to detect labels of the recognition and all of these recognition resources that we want to allow them. So that's basically
Sure.
the permission policy that we define for the Lambda. And we skipped on the event source part. So if we go back to the event source, so what we want to do is we want to trigger our Lambda function when the image is uploaded into S3. So basically it means as soon as the image is in the S3 is created, the Lambda is fired up. That's what we basically trying to do. So if you can see on the code here, we add the CDK construct recognition function lambda.add event source, and the event sourcer is the S3, and the name of the buckets, so image buckets that we created earlier, and then the property is when the S3 event type, the object is created, please fire up this lambda function. And that's basically what we are doing here. So that's pretty much for the construct. And what I'm going to do next is to synthesize the app. So basically, CDK synthesizes one of the commands to synthesize the applications, which will compile down into the CloudFormation template. So
Cool. And do we also want to do a quick step through of the AWS Lambda function that's in there, the code, May?
Yes, I was thinking while we are deploying it, we would jump to
Oh,
the
perfect. All right, let's do that. Good
because
point.
we're waiting some
Saving
time
time.
to
All right, frugally time. That's perfect.
exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool. So first
Nice.
we're gonna do, if you can see my terminal,
Okay, we see your
big enough.
terminal. Yes, we do.
CDK so that is to synthesize the application. Basically, what's going to do, like we said, it's going to compile down into fully formed JSON YAML template. So
You can
that
see
is
there, it's not insignificant too, right? Even at this point, the template is quite large and quite verbose.
If you
And
can
so,
see, yeah.
yeah.
So cool. So that is all good. Next step, we're going to deploy the application. So I'm just going to use CDK deploy command to deploy the resources that we just created. Why it is deploying behind the scene, we're going to jump onto the Lambda to explain about that. So just quickly looking at what we have created here, if you can see the IAM resource changes, creating, it looks good, just the sanity check to make sure everything's all right, creating the things, and it say, do you want to deploy? Yes. So while it is
Perfect.
deploying the CloudFormation, let's jump back to the recognition, the Python code.
Yes. All right. Perfect. Okay, so this Python code, you can see a couple of things straight away at the top here. So what we're doing is that within the global scope of this Lambda function, we're declaring and instantiating our service clients. So you'll see here we've got our Amazon S3 service client, and we've got our recognition service client, and also our DynamoDB service client. And we're instantiating that in the global scope to make use of context reuse. So the idea is that as we're going and invoking our Lambda function, we don't have to reinstantiate those service clients every time the functions run. It can stay hot and keep using that service client. So it's a way of sort of gaining some performance there. The handler is the entry point to our AWS Lambda function. So that's the function that's going to get called whenever we invoke our AWS Lambda function. And that's a really important one, because there we basically use that to take a look at the event payload, the payload that's getting sent to our AWS Lambda function when we invoke it, and then we can get the details out of that. So May, you moved the screen on me.
Sorry,
Stay
I
still.
just quickly checked.
Okay, right. Okay, so we're pulling the records out of the automatic records that are being placed into the event object there by Amazon S3, which is essentially our bucket and our key. And we're using that to then go and call the recognition function, or the rec function here, which is the function that we're using to go and then perform our detection, perform our actual image detection. So if you want to scroll up a little bit there, mate. So we're passing through the bucket and the key. So the bucket, the Amazon S3 bucket, our image bucket, and then the key. And then we're basically going through, and we're performing or using that client that we instantiated earlier and calling a detect labels method on that client to go through and request image recognition on our image. So we're passing through the location of our image in our Amazon S3 bucket, and we're passing through some parameters here, or some properties. So we've got max labels, so the number of labels that we want to retrieve, as well as the confidence level that we want this to actually have. And so we can adjust that and pivot and tweak depending on how much confidence we want Amazon recognition to have when it sees an object, right? Which is pretty cool.
Yep. And we just finished deploying.
Cool.
Stack.
All right.
Cool.
Nice. All right.
I'll let you finish the Python code.
All right. Cool. All right. So then what we're doing is we're going through and we're basically building out our array of objects, so that we can go through and iterate through those labels, and use that to create an object so that we can upload that object into our Amazon DynamoDB table. So you can see here we're using again our DynamoDB client that we instantiated earlier. We're calling the table. We're using the table class. We're basically going through, and we're doing a put item method on that table object that we've just created here. This basically we're going through and creating that object, and we're going through and doing a put item on that. We're passing through the image labels object that we created, and we're doing that in a try catch kind of model so that we can return errors and things like that if anything goes wrong.
Amazing.
All right, cool.
So let's go back to the stack.
Yes. All right, let's do that.
So the stack has been deployed successfully, and you can see the two outputs. So that's the two CF and CDK CF and output that we declared in the code. So
right, cool.
The DynamoDB name and image bucket. So what we're going to do next is to test it, this little deployments, if that works or not. So what I'm going to do next is to copy the image from my local and upload it into this image bucket. So I have a little image ready in there, and I'm going to copy the image and upload it. Cool. So the upload has successful. So the image has been uploaded. What we want to do is, if you remember, the Lambda function should be triggered as soon as the image is uploaded, and the result of the Lambda function from the recognition function should be put into the DynamoDB table. Okay. So the next one we're going to do is to do a DynamoDB scan to give us some output if there's anything that's put it into the DynamoDB from the Lambda function.
Okay. And just so you know, scan is basically going to look through all of the items in the table and return results. So we're just doing this quickly to get some feedback back to see whether or not our AWS Lambda function is picking up that image and doing its job, essentially. We'll see.
Not the best approach to do the scan for the whole table, but
from a performant way, but yeah, for just checking the table.
So from the table, let me check. Table name.
Just pop in your table name there from the output.
Oh yeah.
Just copy and paste from here. The top one, is it? That one. Yep. Just grab that. Put that in there. All right. There we go. All right. So we have what is probably an Australian animal of some description.
It is an Australian animal.
A kangaroo. Okay. Right. That's good.
Actually, it is a kangaroo, but it's came up with wallaby as well. That's interesting.
It's yes.
So
similar.
So that's pretty much for the CDK applications. We created 3 components. We tested, upload the image, test the Lambda, DynamoDB works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just before we finish up, we just quickly clean up the code that we just resources that we created with CDK destroy to destroy what we
Yeah,
have created.
perfect.
Um, but why I'm destroying out of the screen, I'll just destroy that. So
Okay,
I just quickly
all
go
right.
over what we built in that CDK components.
Okay.
And also, so we built S3, DynamoDB, and recognitions, and all of these code base are available in the GitHub.
Yeah, so go and have a look in GitHub. We're going to continue on with this build next week, but we do want to give you some homework before we close off the stream for the day. So what we're going to do is we're going to post on LinkedIn, and the idea is we'll put our LinkedIn aliases in here so that you can go and check us out. But what we're going to do is we're going to paste a challenge in there, or at least we want you to pop in there and put in a construct, AWS CDK construct of your favorite AWS service. All right, so you can use as many properties as you want, or you can do simplistic way. But just we're gonna pop that question in a LinkedIn post. Just go and respond to the LinkedIn post with your answer of what that construct is. That's your homework, and we'll call it out next week. All right, when we get back into the episode.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week, the same
Buzz
time.
on. Yes, oh, the buzz on. Someone's trying buzz on. Do you know what? I excluded that purposely because I knew someone would try it. Thanks for trying it. But I didn't put it in there. Okay, good. Good try. Good try. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope everyone, got some value of that. Really looking forward to seeing everybody next week. And until then, take care.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.